I want us to really camp on this for a moment. If you want to achieve the results that no one's achieving, are you willing to do the things no one's doing?
To be creative, you need to think outside the box. I disagree with that statement. I don't think thinking outside the box requires any creativity at all. That's the easy thing to do, is to find the things that you can do that are outside the framework. I think real creativity stems from finding a new way to do something inside the confines of the rules that you were given to do it in.
Sales, right? Regardless of what you're selling, we all try to be the smartest person in the room in how we carry ourselves, how we do all the talking, how we talk more than we listen. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way.
Your voice is your voice. When you create content, when you create materials, things to put out into the public, if you're just consistent and stay true to who you are, your audience will always find you.
And I've always said this, I will say it forever and a day. The inner work that you all do on yourself, hear me out on this, the inner work you all do on yourself to figure out who you are, when you really uncover this, watch what happens to all the layers of outer success you have. Things become a whole lot easier, David.
Your silence is far more powerful than anything that you're going to say, especially if you're well known to have been associated with that product or with that company. So if you just be quiet, you're going to make your point 10 times stronger than if you try and talk bad about people or damage their reputation, because the only person who loses in that situation is you.
The marketplace is changing, your community's changing, your customers are changing. You as an agency owner got to change. And if I can invest in my people, I will collect on my people. I ask this question, David, literally to salespeople. When I'm coaching salespeople, tell me something good. Tell me a good success. Tell me a good win. What'd you learn? What'd you learn over the last week? Sometimes I hear crickets, dead silence.
And I think that too many times we focus so much on the visualization piece and looking ahead that we tend to forget that there are really good lessons to be learned from what we've already been through. And we need to make it a conscious effort to go back and think through those things as well. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. One of the ways that I love to do this is to bring you people that you may have seen on the periphery, but haven't really dove in and gotten to experience yet. And specifically when it comes to people who know about sales, have proven that they know about sales, but they don't necessarily swim in the same pool that we do as middle market commercial insurance producers. Our guest today is Mr. Larry Levine, who cut his teeth selling office equipment specifically, which if you've heard me speak publicly or listen to the podcast for any period of time, you know that is one of my favorite industries to recruit high-performing sales talent from. Because my goodness, if you can sell copy machines and office equipment, you could sell literally anything. These guys are beating their heads against the door every single day, cold calling, doing all of the things that we've been trained by the old guard to do. But Larry got to a point in his career where he realized it's not just about the numbers. It's about being authentic and finding your genuine self and you falling in love with that person first so that everybody else can. And so today, I'm welcoming Mr. Larry Levine, the author of Selling from the Heart and Selling in a Post-Trust World. We're going to talk about those books, and we're going to talk about sales and probably a whole lot in between. So thanks for coming on, Larry.
Oh, it's my pleasure, David. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to have a great time. Super grateful for you having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So, my philosophy is and always has been, since I launched my agency, that I'm not necessarily looking to go out and hire people who are experienced insurance producers. In my mind, if you're a really good producer, you're not looking for a job. You either have golden handcuffs because somebody's given you an equity position or a path to that, or if you're entrepreneurial enough, you do what I did and you just go out and you start your own agency and you're very happy doing that. And so that leads to a talent gap in our industry when it comes to salespeople. And all right, peer group, this is where we got to put our Kevlar underwear on a little bit, but my peer group's cheap. They don't invest in people. When you go into an agency, and you probably, can relate to this, But it's the old deal. You know, we don't have yellow pages anymore, but essentially that's the virtual yellow pages. Here's the yellow pages, start calling companies, try set appointments and try and get an opportunity to go in and talk to them. Oh, and if you get an appointment set, I'll go with you. And that's really what the training piece is limited to. It's a little bit more formal on the technical side of things. If you want to go get a professional designation or whatever else, we do have those resources available. But as far as taking somebody who really might not know how to go about even simple things that might be second nature to us at this point, like calendar blocking and planning your day and planning your week in advance and knowing where you're going to be, when you're going to be there, and then dedicating yourself to those blocks to make sure that your workload gets done. That stuff doesn't exist, man. So we have to go outside the industry. I look for business to business salespeople, and it's all of the non-sexy stuff is what I would classify it as. Office supplies, office equipment, payroll services, credit card processing, things where people have high volume of cold call requirements from their sales manager, but they don't have the residual income and they don't have the work-life balance that we have here. And that's actually proven to be a pretty good strategy for us because we can slow play bringing people in by having a relationship with them as referral partners first and determining how each other operates at the point of sale. So, all that to say, I mean, it's a long way for me to say I have a lot of respect for the fact that you were in the office equipment arena, man, because like when I think of old school like sales, like the hardcore salespeople, if it's not IBM, it's certainly the copier people next. You know that when you think about the grind like that. And I mean, I remember a guy, you probably know who this is, or have at least seen of him. I don't remember the guy's name, but I want to say he was like the copier ninja or something like that. Have you seen this guy that
I
had
think I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
he made stress balls that looked like bricks that were his business card, and he just said, when you get upset with your copy machine, throw the brick at it and then pick it up and call me or whatever. Guy went viral with his advertising. So I think that there's a lot of genius that can be learned from people that grew up in systematized sales the way that you and I likely grew up in systematized sales. Like everybody had a process. All you had to do is learn the process. You better stick to it or you're going to have a problem. But when I started reading your book, it kind of reminded me of something that I've said over the years, and that is it's easy for people to say you need to think outside the box. To be creative, you need to think outside the box. I disagree with that statement. I don't think thinking outside the box requires any creativity at all. That's the easy thing to do, is to find the things that you can do that are outside the framework. I think real creativity stems from finding a new way to do something inside the confines of the rules that you were given to do it in. And I use that concept when I was at Target running super targets, because everything we had was a common practice. And Target expected you to be inside of common practice. When I traveled the country looking at stores that were broken, all I had to do was look and see where the common practice was broken. And I knew that somebody decided they had a better way. And all we had to do is get them back on that. But there were ways that you could tweak and do things inside of a common practice that led to creativity, but also kept you on the straight and narrow. And when I started reading Selling from the Heart, it's like, okay, this guy's not saying necessarily you need to abandon all the things that you've done as a salesperson, like picking up the phone and dialing or doing marketing drop-ins or whatever else. What he's saying is we need to discover who we really think we are, and we need to believe in that person first, and that will make all of this other stuff a lot more successful for you.
Oh, it's so spot on, and I'm glad you brought this up because I got to play on something you just said about common practice. There's that old saying, common practice is not common sense.
Right.
And there's not a lot of common sense these days, at least through the lens of how I look at things. And I had to learn this the tough way. And I'm glad that you brought up the office technology space. I mean, it's the only space I knew. I love every lick of sales. I didn't expect to last much more than about a year in the copier space. Really didn't. I expected, right, to get some hard nose grit and grind it, sales training, and then I would parlay that into something else. Well, something else never happened, but I figured out how to carve a really good niche in the copier channel that provided very well for me, my family. It afforded me to have 3 copier dealerships that I was business partners in. But what I did that was different, that I just implemented inside our dealership, was it wasn't so much about the process. It wasn't so much about how you went about doing things. It was learning who you were so that when you went out and you did those things that we asked you to do, it naturally flowed. And the reason why I bring this up is my first year, I had to figure this out my very first year in the copier channel, is I was trying to memorize scripts. I was trying to memorize processes and procedures that just messed with my head because I couldn't figure it out until one day, probably 6 months into my first year. I go, man, I got to figure out me. What's going to make me tick so I can take this and make it my own? And I really believe early on in sales, this is the missing link for a lot of people, is they're trying to memorize processes. They're trying to memorize procedures. They're trying to memorize policies. I'm not dissing it by no means, none whatsoever. They become easier when you know who you are. And I've always said this, I will say it forever and a day. The inner work that you all do on yourself, hear me out on this. The inner work you all do on yourself to figure out who you are, when you really uncover this, watch what happens to all the layers of outer success you have. Things become a whole lot easier, David.
Yeah, I think I've actually made a comment on a different podcast that dropped last week where we were talking about my youngest son has special needs,
Okay.
and I'm working with a group that's got a gala that's coming up that we support. My wife and I support both financially, but also through helping them with resources and things, because my wife comes from a company that is an augmentative communication company.
Okay.
They give people a voice. They're cognitively able to speak, but they're nonverbal for any number of reasons. And so I connected her with my friend that is the founder of this nonprofit. But we did a podcast about their gala that's coming up to bring awareness to it, and really talking about um, what the struggle is like. What is it like to try and be a high performing business person while also dealing with what you're dealing with at home, whatever that may be. And in my case, it's, we have 4 kids, and one of them has some fairly significant special needs that require a lot of our time and will, for the foreseeable future. But one of the comments that I made when I was on there was, I think that that if you're someone, people who don't ask for help are weak. I think it's a sign of strength that if you can be self-aware enough to know these are the things that I'm good at, but these are the things that I'm not. And I'm not going to be able to push the needle at all with any of this unless I find somebody better at this than what I am to help me see how to set my day up. And I do remember in reading Selling from the Heart that there was a period of time where you basically reached out to what I assume became a mentor to you, in your career, but it was the person that was number one. You're like, look, if I want to know how to be number one, probably need to ask number one. And I think it's a really interesting thing when you are in sales, specifically outside sales as a hunter, because there's a certain edge that we have to us that we have to push through and get up and do the things that we do every day. And I think that because of that, we allow ourselves, if we let it happen, we let our ego get in the way. And that all got checked at the door, man. Like I didn't see anything in there that said, well, I had to talk myself down from a ledge and let my ego go do this or whatever else. You looked at it and said, this dude's the one who's winning every month. If I want to do as good as I can, I need to find out what that person is doing that's allowing them to win every month. And I think that from what I could tell is probably a major turning point in your career, because that was it at that like 6 months to a year mark that you were in there doing it. And so there's 2 things that I want to bring up that I think are really, really important for anybody in sales to hear that come from just that first section of your book. The first one is the reason you got into the office equipment space, office technology, whatever we classify that, is because your dad knew somebody and your dad said, hey, I think you need to go talk to this guy, because if you're ever going to get hardcore training, this is where you're going to get it. And then to your point, you said, yeah, I'll go, we'll see what happens. And then I'll do this for a year and then it'll parlay into something else. So, number one, even though you were an adult at that point, you still allowed yourself to be coachable and you had the respect to listen to what your father recommended. That's exactly how I got in the insurance industry. My dad said, there's a guy you need to talk to. If you're going to learn from anybody, this is who you need to learn from. I'll set up a lunch so that you can go have a conversation and then the rest is up to you. So 100%, my father's the one who guided me in. But the second piece of that is for you to recognize early on, okay, I need somebody to kind of show me the way and then be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I need help, but also strong enough to go to that person who very easily could have said, look, man, I'm the top salesperson. I got so much going on. I don't have time to be worrying about other people that need to learn from me. I've got sales to make. Go figure it out for yourself. Nobody helped me.
Yep.
Two things there. Number one, you were vulnerable enough yet strong enough to go ask for that help. But number two, that person was willing to invest in you. And I think that that's something that I don't want to get lost in conversation, because I feel like every single one of us at some point will hit some level of success to where people want to ask us for our help and we're going to have to be the ones to make that same decision. We can't ever forget that there were people who invested in us to help us get incrementally better than what we were before we use them as a mentor or a coach or just a friendship relationship or whatever else. And we need to remember to continue to pay that forward, because if that guy would have shut you down, your life may have turned out completely different.
No, 100%. But, you used the ego word a couple times, and I just got to expand on this because ego squashes so much. I learned a long time ago. I checked my ego out at the door just a long time ago. I have no issues, none whatsoever, asking for help. And the reason why is ingrained in my DNA is I got a very curious mindset. I love asking questions because I got to clarify things. I'm a high clarify guy, which means I don't have all the answers for everything. Let's flip this around. Salespeople, sales leaders, business owners, presidents of companies, y'all don't have the answers to everything. With all the respect in the world to everyone out there, there's people out there that are farther along in their career than you, that are smarter than you, that can help you see and achieve things you can't see on your own. I picked up on that early on, and I just asked for help. Use it. It's not a sign of weakness. It's really not. And I learned this even when I was out selling equipment, and still to this day here at Selling from the Heart. If I don't know something, I tell somebody I don't know something, but I will go find the help. I will go ask somebody. I will pull somebody in. Why am I saying this? Because I know who I am. I'm confident in myself. I understand where I'm at in life, but I also understand that if you want to connect to somebody, if you want to relate to somebody, be human about it. In sales, right? Regardless of what you're selling, we all try to be the smartest person in the room in how we carry ourselves, how we do all the talking, how we talk more than we listen. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. And I was okay walking into rooms. This is hilarious. But David, I would literally walk into rooms and I would set the tone real quick saying, hey, you know what? If I was talking to IT people, right, information technology people, people that were a lot smarter than me, I got it out on the table. I said, hey, I want to let you know something. You're way smarter than me. I'm not going to try to outsmart you in any of this conversation because you know way more about technology than I do. But let's just have a conversation on what's going on. But somewhere along the way, if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you I don't know the answer, but I will get it back to you. Or I will pull somebody into the conversation who may know. It's because I understand who I was, what I was strong at, where I was good at, and I had no problem getting it out on the business table. Stuff that I think salespeople today struggle with.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think that probably the best advice that I could give coming out of what I just heard you say is the same thing. I think that the smartest person in the room is typically the one who says the least
Oh,
because they're the one that's listening to what everybody else is saying. Yet we feel this need. And, Chris Voss talks about it in Never Split the Difference, too. He talks about the uncomfortable silence that was, for whatever reason, human
hmm.
nature makes us want to fill that void. And it's actually kind of comical to employ that in your conversations in real life. I was dialing for dollars one day, just trying to set appointments. And I had a conversation with the person, but I could tell that we were kind of at that awkward point at the end. And I had basically asked them, for the appointment, and they had declined. And then it was just silence. And I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Like literally for probably 10 to 12 seconds.
Which
And
seems like an
it
eternity.
seems like it's 5 minutes, man, when
Yeah.
you do that. But I mean, 10 to 12 seconds. And if you have a hard time not talking, just count to yourself. But the person said, well, aren't you going to hang up? And I said, well, no, you're the one that's trying to not give me an appointment. I'm going to make you hang up on me first. And I just, like, really, probably the most authentic thing I could say because it's the first thing that came to my mind. And they literally started laughing on the other end of the phone and said, okay, come on. If you're going to be that stubborn, you must believe in what it is that you have to tell me. And I ended up getting an appointment from it. But it blows my mind that how powerful silence is in a time in our lives where the internet allows you to get your voice and your message out to as many people as are willing to receive it. You could destroy a company, or attempt to anyhow, by giving them negative reviews and speaking bad about them on social or whatever else. But I've told people time and time again, your silence is far more powerful than anything that you're going to say, especially if you're well known to have been associated with that product or with that company. So if you just be quiet, you're going to make your point 10 times stronger than if you try and talk bad about people or damage their reputation, because the only person who loses in that situation is you. The other thing I think is that with the internet being at our fingertips and the ability for us to do as much research as we possibly can, to think that we know, as much as we possibly can of these companies before we go in to meet with them, I think that's a two-edged sword too. One of the things I always caution people about when I'm working with a new producer in the middle market is do all your research, learn as much as you can, but form your questions to validate, not to assume. You need to go in and ask your questions to validate that the research that you've done is actually correct. But don't go in and assume just because you read it on the internet that it's true,
Yep.
because you could end up making yourself look really silly in front of a prospect. But again, it goes back to saying less. The less you say, the more powerful you are, really, in that conversation. I even read a Dave Ramsey said in one of his books one time that he went in to negotiate. I think it was on either a car or a dishwasher, two very different things. But he said, I really didn't say anything at all for 5 minutes. I just nodded my head, and the guy came down like 40% on his price just
Yeah.
because I stood there and nodded my head. He said, I can tell you're a very intelligent man, and you're going to be tough to drive a bargain. And he's like, I said nothing. I just kept my mouth shut. And this person went to all of these preconceived conclusions of what I was thinking or whatever else. And I ended up not even having to work as hard to get the deal that I wanted to get, just because I remained quiet. But again, to your point, I think it all goes back to ego, checking your ego at the door, and realizing that we're all students of the game, man. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And if I haven't, I try my best to learn something before I go to bed, whether it's pick up a book and read another couple of chapters or whatever else. But if we commit ourselves to never quit learning, I think it makes it easier to accept the fact that you don't know everything. Because if you're constantly learning, it kind of defeats the purpose of claiming you're a know-it-all.
Oh, it's so true, and it's why when it's and this is my philosophy. I love learning every day. I read every day. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm watching YouTube stuff every single day because I just have this philosophy. The minute my feet hit the ground in the morning, I wake up with intentionality. And that intentionality goes, you know what? I got to I got to learn something new every single day. I got to learn at least something new every single day. In fact, I hold myself accountable to this. So I plan out my morning. I do my first hour of the morning is all scripted out. I do the same thing every single day for the first hour. I work on me. It's literally my self-reflection time. The minute I get up, obviously I make coffee because I got to caffeinate first thing in the morning. But then from there, I'm working on me. I do a little bit of quick exercise. I read. I'm into my meditation, my spiritual time. Why am I sharing all this with you? Because it cleanses my mind and I'm working on my heart. Because I got to grow my business just like salespeople out there got to grow their business. And in order to do that, I got to have this philosophy that I got to learn something new every single day. And when I wind my day down, before I shut it off, I journal. And the journal is I mean, it's a pretty extensive journal, but I'll give you the last skinny part of this. I hold myself accountable every single day to capture one win. What's something that I won throughout the day? And what did I learn? What was the learning moment in the day? And what has me concerned, because I just want to play on what you said, is I ask this question, David, literally to salespeople. When I'm coaching salespeople, tell me something good. Tell me a good success. Tell me a good win. What'd you learn? What'd you learn over the last week? Sometimes I hear crickets, dead silence. I don't
I was
say a
going to
word.
ask you when
I literally don't say a word, and I'll let it go. And then finally, my response is this a little smart aleck response, but there's a lot of truth to it. When I hear the dead silence, and I'll let it go, then my question back is, what do y'all do during the week?
yeah.
If you're in sales, hear me out on this. Anyone who's listening to this or watching this, if you cannot, with conviction, with clarity, and really conciseness, say, this is what I won throughout the day. This is what my wins for the week were. And by the way, this is what I learned throughout the day. If you can't do that, then are you really working? Because you got to not be working to not find something that you can learn throughout the day and one win, however you want to define it.
So when you get answers back from people and they give you their wins, do you ever see patterns for the types of things that they talk about? Is it always, and I guess here's where I'm going with that. If you were to ask me, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, what's a win that you had today? There's a almost 100% chance that it's going to be, I got to cuddle my little girl for 30 minutes before she went to
Yeah,
school because
so
I'm in
good.
it,
So good.
or it's I got to throw the ball in the yard because I got done with everything I needed to get done. I'm above quota. I got 3 more appointments above what I needed to booked for next week. So I had the peace of mind to shut down, go home, and do the things that are really important to me, which is spend time with my family. And I'm just interested because look, we're in the business world, albeit different segments of what we do, but I have a feeling you're going to have some people that are going to go that route, and you're probably going to have a lot that are going to go to whatever the highest sale was that they made and whatever the win was there. And I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer unless you actually clarify that question. I think you're better off not clarifying it because it tells you what people truly treasure in life more than anything else. And look, I love closing big deals, but I love closing big deals not because I'm so enamored with the money in the fact that I just closed a big deal, as much as I love the fact that that enables me to do the traveling and make the memories with my family, which is what's ultimately the most important thing to me.
100%. And, in the beginning of this, you brought up the clarify word, and I want to use the clarify word is in the beginning, I have to clarify this for people. And what I mean by this is I say, hey, you know what? You may want to start tracking this. And here's what's interesting about this. This is all about getting your heart right. It's hard to sell from the heart if your heart's not right. And what better way to do this than to track things on a daily basis? I'm a simple guy. So I'll keep going. I'm going to go back to the wins and the learning moments for a second. And in the very beginning, I may clarify this with somebody, David, and say, a win could be a sale if that's what you equate it to. Totally get it, right? But that's his face is not going to happen every day. But a win could be a sale. A win could be a great new conversation you had with somebody. A win can be a great connection you made. A win could be, you know what? I woke up and I put my 2 feet on the ground and I'm alive and well. A win could be I had an amazing conversation over dinner last night or this morning or whatever the case may be, breakfast, doesn't matter, but you get where I'm going with my wife, my significant other. My learning moment is this, right? I was reading a book this morning and I learned one thing. I had a great conversation with David and I learned this. Now, if you do this day in and day out, I'm talking Monday through Monday, 7 days a week, do the math on this. Let's just use 30 because it's a simple math for us on here. If I did this day in and day out, Monday through Monday, 30 in a month, that's simple math. That's a combination of wins and learning moments at 60. Do that over a year. That's 720 wins you've captured and learning moments. And you can't tell me you can't turn that into something. But it goes back to, and I learned this from my business coach, is what do y'all attach significance to? And the reason why I bring this up is if you would have asked me, if you would have went back to my 20s and asked me to capture wins, I probably would have captured wins as sales because that's what I attach my significance to. But then the older I started to get in life, the sale didn't mean as much to me. I started to attach my significance to other things. And now, right, as I'm knocking on 60, my significance is just contributing to the lives of others to elevate the sales profession. That's what lights my fire.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I would love to survey 1,000 high performing individuals. Don't even care what they do. They could be in sales, they could be athletes, they could be CEOs, and just ask them the one question: what does the first hour of every day look like for you? And write a book on it. You could literally write an entire book
Yeah.
on that, right?
Yeah.
But you said something, and I think that I think that you would find some common themes in how people start their day. Like, pretty sure we all start by making coffee. Like, I think that's probably a fairly
If
good
you're a
starting
coffee drinker and you
Yeah.
love caffeine.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a high number of us that would do that, and there's probably quite a few that are going to go to the gym first thing in the morning. They're going to get up and stretch out and go work out. There's people who use that time of day for their spiritual devotion time. There are people who use an hour as a combination of all of the above. But, one of the things that I think is really, really important for anybody, regardless of what your profession is you need to have a portion of that time visualizing what you want today to look like. What does a win look like before today ever even happens so that you can visualize on it? But I also think that needs to be married with a healthy amount of reflection. And so the fact that you journal and that you capture these things gives you a historical record that you can go back and look at, because there are times in your sales career where you're going to have ups and downs. Like, I've done it, right? And so in my industry, when you get hired, you typically on in the middle market, we're not competing on price in quotes. We're going after relationships based
Right.
on a value proposition. And so you're either hired or you're not. And when you do get hired, you get an agent or record letter that basically says, hey, you're the person who's representing me in the marketplace. This is official now. You are now my representative with XYZ insurance company. I have kept every single agent of record letter I have ever been awarded for the 20 years that I've been in the insurance industry. And I use those as food for my time of reflection, because if I'm going through a rough spot and I've hit a patch where for whatever reason things aren't clicking, it makes it very easy for me to go back and just start flipping through. Oh, I remember when I got this account. Man, I walked in and cold called them. I had no clue what I was talking about, but they gave me a shot. Like, how did I get in? How did the meeting go? What did I say when I was in the meeting? How did I set things up to ask the question, to ask them if I, for the business and all of those things? And it makes things so clear and so easy, but I feel like we're all moving so quickly that one day of skipping something turns into a month, turns into a year, and things are all of a sudden out of your game. I grew up playing sports. I played on team sports my entire life, even baseball into college. And so I think about it from that perspective a lot. And the sales game is really no different than being a high level athlete either. You have to prepare, you have to train, you have to do all of the same kinds of things. It's more mental in some cases than being an athlete is, and an athlete's being more physical. But at the end of the day, if I'm in a hitting slump, what am I going to do, man? I'm going to go back to when I was batting
Yep.
300 over those 12 games. I'm going to start watching tape. What was I doing differently? What did the pitch selection look like? Where was I standing in the box? And I think that too many times we focus so much on the visualization piece and looking ahead that we tend to forget that there are really good lessons to be learned from what we've
Yep.
already been
Yep.
through. And we need to make it a conscious effort to go back and think through those things as well.
100%. I got to play on I got to play on what you said, but I want to share something, and then I want to drill a little bit deeper because you brought in professional athletes here. But this is one of my favorite sayings, David, and it's if you want to achieve the results that no one's achieving, are you willing to do the things no one is doing? I want us to really camp on this for a moment. If you want to achieve the results that no one's achieving, are you willing to do the things no one's doing? Now, I want to tie in professional athletes because the elite of the elite want to achieve the results that no one's achieving. So they hold themselves accountable to do the things that no one's doing. How does this all tie into the day in the life of a salesperson? It does immensely, because I believe this is my belief on this. Salespeople are the business athletes in the business world. Salespeople are business athletes in the business world. So in order to really hone in and achieve these results, I challenge everyone to come up with a routine and hold themselves accountable to the routine 7 days a week. Here's why. I don't care. Take any of the major sports that are out there, any of the major sports globally, and you ask and you look at and you pay attention to all the top athletes out there. They have a morning ritual. They got rhythms. They got routines. They hold themselves accountable. They got mentors, coaches. They do all this. They work harder on themselves than anybody else does. Here's my question I don't care whatever sales world you're in, but if we direct this into into the PNC world and the world that you live in, David, it's the same thing. What's the first hour of your morning look like? What are you willing to hold yourself accountable to? And mark my word on this. It's hard to sell from the heart and bring your best self forward if on a daily basis you're not working on yourself and working on your heart. So I ask everybody, what's that first hour look like? And what are you willing to do to hold yourself accountable? Because you can't just wake up, right? You can't just wake up, get out of bed, plop your feet on the ground, go make coffee, have a banana, go in the rain locker, right? Freshen up, and then hit your email. There's some people that do that will say, you know what, I'm massively successful. And I say, God bless you, because at a certain point in time, it's going to come back and haunt you. But I want to just encourage everybody. You cannot, and I mean, you cannot sell from the heart if you're not working on your heart on a daily basis.
Well, and I think it's anything, man. It's not limited to that. Whatever it is that you're working on, you need to invest in it on a regular basis, or you're not going to get a return on that investment. But I think it's interesting though, because there's so much of the sales process that's seen, but there's also so much that's interpreted. And the one thing that I think anybody who reads your first book would take from it would be, the more I like this person, the more I love this person, the more I've invested in this person, the more everybody else is going to see that and
Yep.
gravitate toward them as well. And, it reminds me of something that I say quite a bit, and that is, if you be who you are, make your voice is your voice. When you create content, when you create materials, things to put out into the public, if you're just consistent and stay true to who you are, your audience will always find you. But
Yep.
when you're all over the map, nobody knows who you are. You don't even know who you are at that point. And so it makes it very, very difficult to have authentic, long-standing relationships. And the insurance industry is a relationship industry. That's probably one of the most cliche things I could say about it, because everybody says that. But the reality of the matter is, how you perform in a hard market is determined by the investments you made in yourself and in the
Yep.
relationships with your underwriters and your clients and your prospects in the soft market. And how you perform in the soft market depends on making those same investments in the hard market. So the moral of the story is, you don't stop. You do it every day, period. Just like Larry said, it doesn't matter hard market, soft market, whatever else, because I know right now there are people listening to this podcast that are going to make more money than they've ever made in their life this year, because the insurance industry is in the hardest marketplace we've been in the 20 years that I've been in it. And the average account is increasing by 25% in premium, which means a 25% raise in commissions across the board. And as a result of that, they're comfortable and they're not making the investments where they need to make them. And
Yep.
when the market becomes soft, and you don't have your phone ringing off the hook because everybody's shopping, or not everybody's filling out web forms for quote requests or asking for appointments, because now everybody's got the best price and they're doing everything they can to try and attract new talent. And the reality is, it's too late at that point. You can't, it's the Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the next
Yep.
best time's today. It's no different. Like with sales, you can't stop doing this. Your activities are a daily activity that you have to commit to. And again, I say it, it's just like going to the gym. It's just like anything else in life. You miss one day, it's easier to miss two. Then it's a month, then it's 6 months, then it's a year. And then all of a sudden, something that was working really well for you has fallen completely out of the game. And it was because of a lack of discipline.
Oh, 100%. I mean, discipline's the key. And I will tell you this, that's the thing that most people suffer from, is a complete lack of self-accountability and self-discipline. But I do know this: success breeds complacency. Success breeds mediocrity. And this was and my this is just me. Dave, this is my concern. This is the things that just go through this warped head of mine. I really am concerned about tenured salespeople who are dead set in their ways.
Look, we have an industry full of them right now, and many of them sit at the agency owner's chair. That's what's really scary, because we have an industry that is ripe for the picking for bringing
Yep.
in new talent and having them put a different spin on an antiquated industry. Come in and tell us new ways to do old things. Tell us how to sell to you, right? And this goes back to the ego conversation and a lot of the other things we talked about. But I've said this probably 100 times at a bare minimum. We have got to stop worrying about control and start worrying about collaboration, because we're set in our ways. It's always been this way. Why don't we do it this way? Because I said so. There's no training and development. There's no taking the extra second to give the why behind the reason you're giving that direction, which is ineffective training to begin with. But I see it over and over again. And the sad part about all of it is, these are people that are looking to make an exit in the next 5 to 10 years, if not sooner. And they're not going to be able to maximize the asset that they've spent their entire life building on their balance sheet, because they kept control too close to the vest. They didn't collaborate. They didn't invest. They weren't open to other opinions and ideas. And as a result, they're going to pay the price in their ultimate exit from their firm, which is probably going to be a reduced multiple when they go to sell.
Oh, amen on that. Amen. Capital A on that one. Here's why. If I'm an owner, right? If I'm an agency owner right now, and you brought up the evaluation word, If I don't invest in my people, if I don't upskill and coach up my people around, and we all agree you're in a highly relational industry, soft skills, and it's the subtitle is selling in a post-trust world, right? It's soft skills will drive hard dollars. If all right, and what got you to where you're at today is not going to keep you there tomorrow. The marketplace is changing, your community's changing, your customers are changing. You as an agency owner got to change. And if I can invest in my people, I will collect on my people. If I can help them really double down on the relationship building skills, if I can double down and help them with their people skills, this transfers right to increased revenue and increased profits. And if you all are thinking about, hey, in the next 5 years, I might be selling, invest in your people right now, because that will increase the multiple on you selling your agency. If you don't, y'all are going to get what you get. But if you can directly invest in your people, watch what happens 5 years from now when you go to sell.
Or you don't sell and you perpetuate, because those people are going to be able to step in behind you. And whether there's a financial transaction for them to buy you out or not is one side of the coin. But the other side of the coin is you spent 20, 25, 30 years building something, and now it can continue to live and get passed to the next generation,
Yep.
the next generation, because you took the time to invest in people and make sure that they were set up for success. And that's not something that's easy to do, man, especially when you're trying to scale an agency or any kind of business for that matter, because you've got a million and one things you're focusing on, but you have a team of people that all have their own individual needs, and you have to figure out how to fit it all in.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but if maybe I'm looking at this through a different lens, but I just say, listen, if I'm an agency owner, the most precious asset I have
It's your
are my
people
people.
or your relationships, I should say. But
That too, because in selling in a post-trust world, I talk about exactly what you just said. So let's just use simple financial terms. We'll use appreciation and depreciation. If you do not invest in your people and the relationships you have with your people, mark my word on this, they will depreciate. They will depreciate over time. I just use the term lean in. If you lean into your people and you connect with them at the heart level and you understand what they want to accomplish and you coach them up and you upskill them, that appreciates in value.
I agree
I mean, it's
100%.
just simple financial 101 stuff. There's no rocket science behind any of this.
No, I do the exact same thing, except I talk about it as being a relational bank account. Every relationship
100%.
is
Yeah.
just like a bank account. We make deposits, we make withdrawals. If you make more deposits than you make withdrawals, you've got a pretty healthy relationship. If you're withdrawing more than you're depositing, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to end. And so, I agree with that. I think that too many times people use time as the excuse when the reality is, I feel like there are plenty of times in our careers where we just need to slow down to speed up. We need to
Yep.
slow down and make the time to invest, because ultimately that's what's going to help us be more efficient down the road. So if I bring somebody in and I have to spend time investing in them to train them to do something, but ultimately that's going to make the business run smoother and take something off my plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some pain involved with me sacrificing time right now, but I'm doing that because I understand how much time I'm going to free up to do other things. Maybe it's to invest even more in that person to take them to the next level, or it allows me to spread time around multiple people in the organization. Or if I need to go out and actually run sales calls, I can do that as well. But, I think that, again, it's because time is quantifiable. It's finite. We only have so much of it. That's the first thing that we want to grab for ourselves. And it goes back to what we said, earlier on, and that is people come into this industry, they get turned loose, and there's not really a roadmap for them, man. And
No.
you can't You can't rely on the fact that whoever's the agency principal is going to take time out of their day to invest in you. And you can't rely on the fact that the top salesperson is going to graciously offer to let you shadow them. You got to go out and get what's yours. And you can't do that unless you know what to ask for. And you don't know what to ask for unless you take time and invest in yourself on a daily basis to make sure you're aware of who you really are.
Oh, it's so true. So just we're gonna have a funny time here really quick, but just imagine, you got to play along with me on this one, David. Imagine if an agency owner, a principal, right, just spent the time and they asked one question to their people. And the one question is simple as this: where do you see yourself 1 year from now? Just that simple question. Where do you see yourself 1 year from now? And you don't say a word after that. And again, there's might be some awkward silence. There might be awkward silence. And if you get over that 10 to 12 seconds of awkward silence and there's still nothing, you may have to see to go, and, seriously, though, let's think through this. Where do you see yourself a year from now? The reason why I'm asking this is because I want to help you get to where you want to be a year from now. And if you don't know where you want to be a year from now, then let's talk about it even more. If you do know, please share so I can help you get there. Can you imagine, as a principal, as an agency owner, you did that? You brought on new people. And part of your onboarding, you spent a little bit of time with them and say, you know what, I know this is your first day, it's your first week, but where do you see yourself a year from now here? Where do you see yourself a year from now in this industry? And you did that with each and every person. You're going to build up this bank. Now pour all your knowledge and your heart and everything into these people to help them get there. Watch what happens. That simple question: where would you like to be? What would you like to do a year from now? Simple question.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, man, when you ask your questions, if you frame them the right way, you're getting the information you want without appearing to be selfish about it either, right? Because there's
100%.
nothing at all selfish about that question that you just
No.
ask. And it's, I equate it to when I'm meeting with somebody for the first time in a new business appointment. I want to understand what winning looks like to them. Like, for
Yep.
this thing to move forward, what does a win look like to you? And then just sit back, shut up, and let them tell you what a win looks like to them. Most of the time, it's a roadmap for how to get the deal done. But we're so worried about features and benefits and vomiting all over, the table with everything we can do. We don't sit back and listen to what they need us to do for them.
It goes back to ask the questions. Just simply ask the questions that nobody is asking. You
Yep.
get the responses that are not giving everybody else. Just simply ask the questions that gets them to think for a second, that stops them dead in the tracks, that goes, you know what? Freaking nobody has ever asked me this before.
Yeah, and I mean that's an easy way to have people perceive you as intelligent, thoughtful,
Yep.
a professional. Like, we can come up with all of the different adjectives to describe it. So, we've been going for probably close to 50 minutes now, and I know that we both have a call at the top. We could literally go for days.
Oh,
I'm going to flip the script on you for a second, man.
it's all good.
I've read Selling from the Heart. I have Selling in a Post-Trust World. I have to read that one yet, but what's on the roadmap? What's on your radar? Where do you see yourself a year from now? Is there another book coming out? Do you have anything coming down the road that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's actually a couple things coming down the road. I know I have at least one more book left in me. So I'm going to take what I know and what we're building here at Selling from the Heart now, selling in a post-trust world. It's going to be aimed right at leadership. So I'm already conjuring it up. I don't know when, but I poured my heart and soul into writing Selling in a Post-Trust World. It took me a couple of years to put this one together, but I envision taking that book, flipping it into a leadership book. But what's on the horizon, what's really got me excited here at Selling from the Heart, is we're getting ready to launch another podcast. So Selling from the Heart was born through a podcast. Selling from the Heart podcast has been going strong for 8 years, which now turned into the book.
Hey, man, you had a reference link every place you could have one in the text. I know you did.
And so now our big thing is our next podcast we're launching is actually called Culture from the Heart. And it's right aimed at CEOs, business owners who are heart-centered, who have a heart-centered culture. We want to give them a voice, and we want them to share what's making their company so heart-centered. And so that's what's on the horizon. That's what we really, really are jazzed about. And here's why. And I'll leave you all this. I see too many CEOs. I see too many business owners who are genuine, who are heart-centered. But then when you get down into the sales culture and the DNA of the sales team, it doesn't match the CEO or the business owner. Big disconnect. You got CEOs who are heart-centered, genuine, authentic, but there's a mixed message going out when the salespeople go out in the field because no one's coaching them on the same philosophy that the CEO and the business owner has. That's what's lighting our fire here at Selling from the Heart as we bring this message. And that's why we're coming out with the Culture from the Heart podcast.
Good deal. And they'll be able to get that on any podcast channel, I assume.
Yeah.
All right, listen, y'all know what the drill is. So you have to follow directions or it's not going to work, but I need you to listen to what I tell you. David@killingcommercial.com. If you email me there and in the subject line, you write Selling from the Heart, and in the body, you give me your address. The first dozen people who send me an email will get a free copy of Larry's first book, Selling from the Heart, Compliments of Power Producers podcast. But it's got to be structured that way. If you don't put your address in the body, I don't know where to send the book to. And I can't tell you how many of y'all just send me emails with the name of the book in the subject line and then nowhere for me to send it to. And guess what? I don't take time to reply and ask. I need you to follow directions the first time because we'll get 100+ emails from people who want copies of the book. So that's your chance to get a free copy of Selling from the Heart. And that's just a way for me to say thank you for listening and also to say thank you to Larry for spending, 45, 50 minutes just shooting the breeze with us on the podcast this afternoon. So, I know you've got to run, man, because you've got another appointment coming up. But sincerely, you've got an open invite to come back anytime you want, and would love to dive deeper when your new podcast comes out or whatever. We absolutely want to help you spread the word. So thank you for taking time to visit us today. I know that a lot of people are going to appreciate the message that you brought.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Yes, sir.